Okie dokie, everyone. It's nice to be together for our sadly last Bible study of the year before vacations come in and the summer schedule officially gets into gear. And so we made a good headway. We started with Genesis 1:1, and we made it midway, a little more through Exodus. Pretty good. I think we're probably going to get right around the tabernacle, probably. We're still sort of in the process of rules and regulations that we are to live by. And so we're going to be sort of looking at that a little bit today, among some other pieces. So that should be really nice. Let's join together first in our blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah
Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav b'tzivanu la'asos b'divrei Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. We're still in the middle of Mishpatim, Exodus 22, verse 21. Again, we dealt with a lot of laws last week that dealt with communal responsibility. What is our obligation to each other? How do we treat each other? How do we create society? We're going to continue with such laws. So Linda White, Linda, do you want to begin here? You communal leaders?
You communal leaders shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. If you do mistreat them, I will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me, and my anger shall blaze forth, and I will put you to the sword, and your own wives shall become widows and your children orphans.
So we're starting off with a bang, starting off with some really important theology here, / a little bit of diciness. So the idea here, this is going to come to play, especially in the prophets. They're going to use a lot of this terminology. There's a concern on how the widow and orphan are treated. It becomes a triumvirate, and the prophets usually get widow, orphan, stranger. Here it's just two. We get widow and orphan. And the reason why we need to be careful at how we are treating the widow or the orphan is
nobody else takes responsibility.
They have no one to look out for them.
Exactly right. That they are the people who are most likely to be taken advantage of in society because they do not have communal standing or power or influence. And so it is easy to mistreat the widow or orphan because they don't have advocate or power in the same way. Stranger gets looped in, again, as I mentioned, as well, and so that becomes almost a stand-in. It becomes almost like a metaphor for don't treat people who don't have the same amount of power, access, influence as you do. Right, watch how you're treating those in society that don't have the same ability to, take care of themselves or to climb the social and economic ladder. There has to be a clear line in the sand sort of drawn that don't punch down. Don't kick people when they're down. Don't create laws making things harder for them. And because if you do mistreat them, because you might think that they don't have an advocate, but it turns out they sort of have an advocate. And that would be the big G.
God.
Yeah, the big G's coming for you. So God then is going to heed their outcry and start laying the smacketh downeth. God's going to come down and just smack people around. And you think it's so much fun to, bother the widow and orphan, you're going to become, widows and orphans as well. Again, back to that eye for eye, tooth for tooth business we read last week. But God is going to, create the balance, so to speak. God is going to, do justice on behalf of said widows and orphans. Make sense?
No, not really, because then he just like more widows and orphans,
We'll all be blind and toothless, the eye for eye, right? Yes.
If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, do not act toward them as a creditor. Exact no interest from them. If you take your neighbor's garment in pledge, you must return it before the sun sets. It is the only available clothing. It is what covers the skin. And what else shall your neighbor sleep? Therefore, if that person cries out to me, I will pay heed, for I am compassionate.
That's right, compassionate. We had blazing anger and the sword about 6 seconds ago, but God is also compassionate. Don't forget, right? So here we have a little bit more about the cash flow, about the money, that it's good, to lend money, but especially if you're lending it to the poor, don't collect interest. They don't have the money to really pay it back, right? So have some rahmanas. It's okay to lend money, but don't expect them to give you back a 5%, 10% return. It's not really reasonable. Same thing if they're that poor that they don't have any money, they only have literally the clothes on their back, and they say, here's my, linen shirt, here's my, whatever they're wearing at that point. Here it is. You take it while I work, and I'll get it back, later. The idea is, hey, make them, sleep naked outside. Give them their clothing back. Make sure that they are, given that dignity. That it's not really good to even grab their clothes, but if you do, again, make sure you give it back, because it can't be expected to lie there without a stitch. They need to have their clothing back.
Rabbi, it seems to me
Yeah.
that all these years later, the Jewish people are still basically following the same law. We're still for the underprivileged and protecting and for social issues. That's all part of our makeup.
I'd like to think so, though it's hard to generalize to be sure, but definitely it is part of certainly in the reform movement. That, to be fair, conservative Orthodox as well, part of the theology of sort of social justice work, and trying to look out for the the people who need help in our society, who are maybe impacted by poverty, or impacted by unjust laws.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think that's there, indeed. Yeah, very important stuff. Okay, so now talk a little bit about God here. Gary, you want to pick up? You shall not revile.
Okay. You shall not revile God, nor put a curse upon a chieftain among your people. You shall not put off the skimming of the first yield of your vats. You shall give me the first male. I'm sorry. You shall give me the male firstborn among your children. You shall do the same with your cattle and your flocks. 7 days the male firstborn shall remain with its mother. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. You shall be holy people to me. You must not eat flesh torn by beasts in the field. You shall cast it to the dogs.
Indeed. Okay, so there's a lot here. Not reviling God is a good start. It's probably not the best idea to talk bad about the deity, because we know it doesn't really end well usually. And let's have some respect for social structure. Don't put a curse. Don't disrespect the chieftains, of the people. Skimming of the vats. I don't know. That's more environmental, ecological, social justice stuff, that you should make sure that you're doing that. I'm not even quite sure what the vats are, to be honest. I'm not, Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
They were mentioned redeeming the firstborn male.
Yeah.
Is that something that we still do? Because it seems to me, I remember Rabbi Treiser bringing to Torah class some years ago a handful of coins that were used in a ritual to redeem him as he was the firstborn.
Yeah, I have mine at home as well. That the Taben, the redemption of the firstborn, that mothers and parents are supposed to go to the Rabbi to redeem the children, by paying a few shekels, whatever the going rate is for a firstborn son in that moment. No, there's a prescribed amount. And you do a little ritual, and and then you go home. But you have some, some coins for this. As my mother has said, I have them. They can't be mine. It's not right. I do have them, but I don't remember who they are. I don't remember. Anyway, but yes.
Because I don't think a lot of people in the reform movement really ever think or even actually maybe know much about that.
Well, I'll tell you, Gary, in about, what's today? It's the 31st of May, right? So about a month, I will have completed 15 years in the rabbinate. And that's pretty cool. Not once in 15 years have I been asked to do redemption for sport, whatever that is worth. So I can only speak from my experience. Yeah, I don't see it.
Do we have to redeem the rabbi at some point? Is that it?
Also, I think about my mother, because my mother always said that she wants her money back. Because she did it, and I wound up in temple service anyway. So she's like, "Where's my silver coins?" But I don't think she gets a refund. I don't think that happened.
I had to do it for my son.
Say again?
I said I had to do it for my son.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in a different generation we had it a little bit more, but I haven't really heard much about it recently. Maybe I have to just be more forceful in asking for my cut. Maybe I just have to just put that on the list of things to do. As part of the ritual. Where's my coins? Okay. Cattle similar, but cattle's going up to God in a different way. The priests are going to wind up grabbing that and having a little lunch. And then, this last part is great. You shall be holy people to me. If all it takes is not eating the flesh toward my beasts in the field, I think we'll all do a really good job. Maybe don't eat roadkill. That would be nice. From your grill to our grill, the Roadkill Cafe. Driving by that somewhere. You kill it, we grill it.
You stab it, we slab it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So let's not, don't do that. Easy enough, right? You can give that to the dogs. That's all right. Okay. Chapter 23, onwards and upwards. Leah, you want to pick up here? You must not carry.
You must not carry false rumors. You shall not join hands with the guilty to act as a malicious witness. You shall neither side with the mighty to do wrong. You shall not give perverse testimony in a dispute so as to pervert it in favor of the mighty. Nor shall you show deference to a poor person in a dispute.
Yeah, so here it's very interesting because we're talking here about justice. Well, first, the false rumors is easy enough, right? That we shouldn't be lying. We shouldn't be creating, false narratives here. And especially in this case, in terms of the justice system, that there shouldn't be any lying allowed, right? So we can't join hands with the guilty to act as a malicious witness, trying to exonerate them, trying to, say, oh, well, I know so-and-so did such and such, but under oath I'm going to lie. You can't really perjure yourself. And then here there is the, you can't side with the mighty, but you also have to let justice be justice. You can't lie to help a poor person either. Justice has to be sort of
fair. It has to be fair.
It has to be fair. And so that's an important, obviously, legal principle even today. Okay, Leah, give me one more.
Okay. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back. When you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless help raise it.
Yeah, be a person in the world, right? It doesn't matter if you don't like the
Don't
dude.
be an ass. Okay.
Yeah. Are we having some amusement with the language here?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
I got
fine.
through it though. It was hard.
Yes. But yeah, the idea is the animals didn't do anything to you, right? The animals didn't, create any problems. And so don't, cause them undue suffering, right? There's a principle in Judaism, it's called Tsar Balei Chaim, which means that you have to have compassion, upon animals. You can't, have undue burden on them. And so in this case, like the animals hurt, the animals maybe not, doing well because it's overburdened and stuff. Help out, show some kindness. Maybe you make an enemy into a friend or something. But at the minimum, you're helping out these animals that might be lost or might be suffering in some way. Makes sense. Okay. Sandy, you want to pick up here? You shall not subvert.
You shall not subvert the rights of your needy in their disputes. Keep far from a false charge. Do not bring death on those who are innocent and in the right, for I will not acquit the wrongdoer. Do not take bribes, for bribes blind the clear-sighted and upset the pleas of those who are in the right. You shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt.
That last line is familiar. We read it last week as well because it appears a few times in the Torah, to be sure. Some other stuff, again, we've had it different ways already, right? So we don't subvert the rights of the needy. We don't kick them while they're down. We don't sort of stack the deck against those who are in need. Don't, accuse people maliciously of things they haven't done. Because if you do that, no, I saw Shlomo kill Shmuel, kind of thing, that could put that person in a really bad spot, obviously, if you're going to be lying under oath and trying to convict people who are innocent. And then, of course, bribes. Pretty straightforward. Don't take bribes, right? Don't do that. And that's sort of what we got here. It's just more, how do we create community? How do we create society? What are the things that we need to do in order to take care of each other? It's pretty, again, for us, straightforward, but for them, it's pretty important, especially as I've mentioned, I think more than one occasion, is that in ancient civilization, ancient Near East, the text that we're sort of reading obviously originated, in that area, till today. That we're creating laws, but if you today, I think again, there's 197-ish recognized countries in the world, not counting territories, principalities, almost 200, let's say. And there are far too many of them where if you are rich, you can just sort of kill somebody and it's okay. You can just sort of do that. And maybe you pay a fine or something, that if you're rich enough, you can just sort of kill somebody and it's okay. And the Torah, talk about 2,700 years ago, maybe a little bit more actually, even then it's saying, no, you can't do that. That doesn't work. That if you kill somebody, no matter what your financial status is, you're going to be, in trouble and subject, in the biblical conception, at least, to capital punishment if you kill someone. And so I think they're trying to make it very clear that your wealth does not exonerate you from legal consequences, whether judicial consequences, whatever they may be. And that was pretty revolutionary for that time. Frankly, again, as I said, depending on where you are now, it would be fairly revolutionary. And it's been a moment since we've had the Bible. It's been a little while. So
You mean we can't cross Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and not get in trouble?
one would like to think.
Good example.
You can't be a journalist and walk into the Saudi embassy and get hacked to death. Oh, come on, that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Nothing happened to them.
As I said, like if you have enough money, depending on where you're living, it is easier to subvert the cause of justice. So I'll put it that way.
50 years ago, Bob Dylan said, money doesn't talk, it swears.
Mm. It's good.
That's good. Okay, Sandy, give me one more here. 6 years.
Sure. 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield. But in the 7th you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave, let the wild beasts eat. You shall do the same with your vineyards and your olive groves.
So we have the idea here. It's going to be more specifically spoken about in Leviticus about Shemitah, about the 7th year. The idea is that for 6 years, you can do whatever you want, but even the land needs to rest, right? And so you have to prepare. You have to take the, the growth and all the products, as you can get it in those first 6 years. And in the 7th, you don't work the field. You have to let the land rest. And then it's naturally going to grow. Some of it is naturally going to grow because that's sometimes what plants and agriculture sort of does, and so then it's for everybody. So your field is for you the first 6 years, but then the 7th year, your field is basically everybody's field because you would actually own the field. God owns the field, and you're sort of just leasing it from the divine. So the 7th year is more of a it's everybody's, right? It's because it is God's, it then belongs to everybody. So everyone can come, eat some grapes, eat some pomegranates, eat some whatever else is growing that year. And yeah, olive groves, vineyards, everything else. Because again, 6 and 7, 6 years, 7th rest, and now we're gonna get Shabbat again. Yeah.
Did it say somewhere earlier that if this is your field, that you shouldn't eat the whole thing, that you should leave some?
Yeah, so in the first 6 years, all you are responsible to do is to leave the corners, leave sort of the perimeter of your field, and let the
Gleaners.
to glean. So the borders, right, the edges of the field. And so that's every year you're supposed to do that. But then for the 7th year, the whole field's up for grabs. But 100% right. The edges of the fields are always meant to be left for the poor, the stranger, et cetera, et cetera. You can't hawk someone's china for taking an ear of corn. It's on the edge of the field. Okay. Sharon, you want to pick up here? 6 days?
Sure. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from labor, in order that your ox and your ass may rest, and that your home-born slave and the stranger may be refreshed. Be on guard concerning all that I have told you. Make no mention of the names of other gods. They shall not be heard on your lips.
Indeed. So again, we have here another return to Shabbat. Mishpatim even begins with some prohibitions against idolatry. So it sort of bookends a little bit. So we have the idea here of, again, Shabbat, that everyone gets to rest, nothing that we haven't seen before, in the 10 Commandments in particular. And then you get this sort of last little admonition, be on guard considering all that I have told you. Pay attention. If you pay attention, things go much better for you in the Bible. And watch those other gods, because if that happens, usually it doesn't end well. Again, we have these other idolatrous deities, Baal and Molech, and I don't remember. There's some other dudes there too that aren't so pleasant. Asherah, who, and so if you start bowing down, worshiping these gods, there's going to be some trouble. There's going to be some problems. Trouble with a capital T.
That rhymes with.
Cool. Okay. Thank you for that. Sharon, give me this one here 3 times.
3 times a year you shall hold a festival for me. You shall observe the feast of the unleavened bread, eating unleavened bread for 7 days as I have commanded you, at the set time in the month of Abib, for in it you went forth from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. And the feast of the harvest of the first fruits of your work, of what you sow in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the results of your work from the field.
Okay, so again, little calendaring, again, always important to have the calendar. You have to have the cycle, the rhythms of Jewish life. And so we get, of course, Passover. Then we get Shavuot, which is next week. Then Sukkot, that's right. So the three big festival holidays, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And we're so close to Shavuot, as our adult B'nai Mitzvah students can attest. We are getting very close to that festival, that holiday. We're going to celebrate the giving of the Torah and of our B'nai Mitzvah students accepting Torah. So that's going to be very nice indeed on Friday. Here, of course, we don't have any of that. We have the agricultural aspects of the holiday. Same with Sukkot. That we get the agricultural aspects of the holiday, because these were, of course, agricultural festivals in addition to historical festivals. The agriculture probably almost definitely came first, and then the historical gets linked in. Sometimes not much later, but sometimes a little later for that. But it's coming up, the big three, and that's when we say Chag Sameach, right? On Purim, you could say Chag Sameach, but you'd be wrong. But you can't say it on Purim because it is not a Chag, technically speaking. It is not a festival. It is a holiday, and holidays and festivals are different things. So you could say Chag Purim Sameach is what people sometimes do, just add that word Purim in there to differentiate it, or with Hanukkah, Chag Urim Sameach, happy festival of lights, to differentiate between Chag Sameach for festival. And of course, Chag gets changed into Arabic and it becomes Hajj. And that is when they go to Mecca for that experience, to go for their festival, to go to Mecca to celebrate, which every Muslim has to do once in their lifetime, the pilgrimage, because they are, for us, pilgrimage festivals. We would go to the temple, we would go to Jerusalem in order to give in these offerings. And so Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot are our pilgrimage festivals. And then in the Muslim tradition, Hajj is when you have to go to make your pilgrimage to Mecca. Okay, it all connects. Okay, Karen, 3 times a year.
Okay. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the sovereign Adonai. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, and the fat of my festival offering shall not be left lying until morning. The choice first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of your God Adonai. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk.
Yeah, okay. So we get a lot here. The 3 times, that's just referring to what we had above, the festivals. No blood of the sacrifice with anything leavened. I guess no hamburgers, because that feels like, the blood of the sacrifice. I don't know. But the blood is always very tricky. You have to be careful with blood in the Bible for a number of reasons, and so don't do the leaven stuff there. Don't leave the fat. That's flavor. You have to have that for later. Don't leave the fat around so much. It goes bad. The first fruits, etc., and my favorite. You shall not boil it in its mother's milk, which, from a biblical reading, is basically nonsense. Like in terms of what it actually means. It's probably a prohibition of, as we'll have later on in the text, of killing the mother, animal and the child animal at the same time. But this, of course, becomes a prohibition by the rabbis. Thank you very much, to not have milk and meat together. And so you should not boil a kid in his mother's milk means no cheeseburgers for anybody. And so that's here the understanding. And of course, it always leads to the question, Rabbi, what about chicken parmesan? It's so tasty.
No.
Everyone loves another dish. That's the one I had in my head, but but those kinds of sort of dishes. Why chickens don't give milk? Why can't I have my chicken parm sandwich or my chicken Alfredo or whatever else? I'll get out of these dishes, but whatever it is, it's not coming to my head. What they are. So why can't we do it? And what's the answer?
It's not kosher.
Because God said so.
If God said so, that's or at least the rabbi said so, to be sure. But God said so. The rabbi certainly did. This is slippery slope Judaism, right? Because let's say you go to your favorite Italian haunt and you order a chicken parmigiana sandwich, or you order, the chicken francese with, the butter sauce and whatever it is. And you say, well, chickens aren't cows, they don't give milk. Let me have this. And you go, ooh, that's tasty. That tastes really good. That chicken and the milk together. That's just delicious. I love it so much. I wonder what veal parm would taste like. Maybe that would taste even better. I wonder what that butter would do on top of my steak. It melts all down, that herb garlic butter. That would be good too. All because you had the chicken and milk. So you can't have that either, because
That's why you took away chicken?
that's why you take away chicken, because it leads you down a bad path. That is one of the
Pringle and I were talking about that last night.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell her.
That's one of the primary reasons. There's other ideas about, like, in the dark you can't tell the difference what you're eating. I'm not really sure I buy that as much. Like, oh, is this chicken or is it veal? I don't know. It's all delicious. So I'm not. I don't know if I buy that as much. But yeah, it's that idea that, look, a little sin leads to a bigger sin, and so you have to have your fence right around the Torah, around the regulations. That way you don't lead
That's
yourself in a
ridiculous.
bad way. It is literally like the of so much of Jewish law.
What?
It is literally foundational. Asu siag to build the fence
But
around the
fish you
Torah.
can have.
Yeah, because fish don't count. Yeah, I don't know. That's Michigan too. I can't help you. The fish came up here as well, and I was saying how fish doesn't count because fish isn't meat.
It
I
doesn't
don't
give
know.
much credit to humankind.
I think we've earned that. To be fair.
Well, today we've earned it, no
yeah.
question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yikes. And of course, as I do like to say, the Torah or rabbinic tradition is absolutely no problem with chicken and egg together. There's no prohibition there. Because you think about matzo ball soup, and whatnot, and other things, like there's
Yeah.
no prohibition, to chicken and egg being together, which you would think that would be a problem. But egg is also neutral, like fish. So you could have a filet of fish at McDonald's, don't think there's much fish in there, to be honest, either. That's another problem for another day. But you can have, what is it? I got it, the grouper Reuben. The grouper Reuben you can have all day long, and it's perfectly
Wow.
fine. I've had a couple in my day, and they're mighty tasty. To do the grouper Reuben. Get a little Swiss, get a little, what do they put on it?
Sauerkraut.
Thank you, sauerkraut. Thank
Russian
you.
dressing.
Right.
Mhm.
Get a nice toasty bread, make a mess of yourself. It's a good time. So those are all good. So we can rejoice in our group of Reubens, but not a real Reuben, not a corned beef or pastrami sort of Reuben. My priest friend tried to get that in Joel's, and it didn't work well for him. Where's my Swiss cheese? No, Father, we can't put Swiss cheese on the Reubens. We have to explain to him kosher law. It was fine. Good dude. This ruins all chicken and milk dishes for anyone who is observing kashrut, and it's sort of rough. But again, as I said, this goes to everything. Like so much in Jewish law is based on this, and everyone's favorite, all of the modesty laws, in Orthodox Judaism that they adhere to more and above, come to this same point: is there a prohibition, against a man hearing a woman sing, right? And the Torah has no problem with it. It's never mentioned in the Torah, certainly, or in the Bible. This comes later. The idea that if a man hears the salacious sound of a woman singing, then he might be drawn to her, and then they might go down a bad road, and might be more things that come up unholy behaviors that might come up, at least in that paradigm of unmarried folk or whatever it might be. So, a lot of these laws that come out are usually based upon, well, we don't want you to do X, but if you do Y and Z, you might do X. Now you can't do Y and Z either. And so that sort of helps, again, build that fence and other people transgress against their conception of the law. Doesn't give us a whole heck of a lot of credit. That is definitely accurate. I can't argue that point. Okay. Okay, Karen, give me one more here. I'm sending.
I am sending a messenger before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have made ready. Pay heed to him and obey him. Do not defy him, for he will not pardon your offenses, since my name is in him. But if you obey him and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and a foe to your foes.
So there's an idea. God's going to delegate. And it actually doesn't work out so well because God changes of the divine mind a little later on. That God's not going to be schlepping around the wilderness with these people, for all this time. And God's going to send an angel to sort of do this work. But then later on, God sort of calls an audible because the people need a little bit more. But the idea being that, God wants to, put these guys to good work here. Everyone needs their job to do. But again, doesn't exist that way.
I'm supposed to be able to recognize the messenger though, right?
Yeah, like the whole angel, fiery seraph kind of thing. I think you probably, in the game of Guess Who, like we could find them pretty easily. Who's that dude with the flaming sword? That might be Gabriel. Though if it's just some dude, you're right, it could be a problem. That they need to sort of identify themselves. Barbara, you want to pick up when my messenger?
When my messenger goes before you and brings you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I annihilate them, you shall not bow down to their gods and worship or follow their practices, but shall tear them down and smash their pillars to bits.
There we go. Very happy passage there. All these ites, you're going to be dealing with all these ites, and you're going to mess them up a little bit when you get into Canaan, when you get back to the promised land, so to speak, and God's going to help you kick some butt there. But once you wipe them all out, amen, once you sort of do that work, then you also have to destroy their pillars and tear down their altars and all that other stuff. Why knock all this stuff down?
Because there's only one God.
Only one God, and you don't want to have temptation. You don't want to be walking down the street one day going, well, I was going to worship God, but now I see this temple and altar of Baal there. Let's take a right turn and check out this place over here. Their services look awesome. They're having much more fun than in our services. There's a lot more nudity and violence in their services than there are in our services.
And they're giving out free fiesta wear at every service. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you might want to go there and check it out. But if you destroy it, if you knock it all out, then you don't have the distraction. I was gonna go to the library, but I wound up here. You don't want that. So once again, maybe not giving us a lot of credit. But the idea is we can't have the distraction, and of course, because they are, improper, not sanctioned altars and stuff. And this is going to be a big thing, for the prophets as well. Not only about their own, not only about the idolatry issue, but unsanctioned places of Israelite worship are also going to be an issue for the prophets as well. That you go to Jerusalem to do this stuff. You don't go to other places in Israel. That's not going to work. And so there's a lot of infighting and politics there, but that's going to be a few hundred years past this. So we'll get there in 2024. So slowly but surely. Okay, Barbara, give me one more here. You shall serve.
You shall serve your God Adonai, who will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. No woman in your land shall miscarry or be barren. I will let you enjoy the full count of your days. I will send forth my terror before you, and I will throw into panic all the people among whom you come, and I will make all your enemies turn tail before you. I will send a plague ahead of you, and it shall drive out before you the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites.
And any other ite you want. Here pretty good, in terms of pretty straightforward. Just God's going to do nice things, do the right thing. You're going to have sort of a happy utopian kind of life, and you're going to be successful in all of your endeavors, and not so much for the bad guys. We're going to, So that's what we have here. I don't think it needs a lot of explication, but the idea that if you do the good things, good stuff's gonna happen. If you do the bad stuff, it ain't gonna work so well. Okay, we're just going forward here. Tyler, you want to pick up here?
Sure.
I will not drive them out.
I think ours is, I will not send forth.
I will send forth my terror before you, and I will throw into panic all the people.
Yeah,
among whom-
we're a little lower. Further down.
Next paragraph.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know what that means.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will not drive them out before you in a single year, lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply to your herd. I will drive them out, and I'll drive them out before you little by little until you have increased and possessed the land. I will set your borders from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistia, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you will drive them out before you.
There you go. So you're gonna take over the land, and God has a plan. God's good in demographic and urban planning. God wants to make sure that we do this correctly and don't make a mess. You can't bite off too much that you can chew, right? It's not a good thing. So we'll piecemeal this, and eventually we'll get rid of everybody that needs to be gotten rid of. And because if we don't, if everyone gets wiped out quickly, you're gonna have all this cattle and stuff roaming around the land. It doesn't work so well. So you got to do it sort of slowly but surely. Here we get some. And it's not only here, of course, but some content that certainly plays out on the world stage today. The idea of what should the borders of Israel proper be, and so more than one time we sort of get some ideas from the Bible what the borders might be, in terms of the biblical vision of what it might be. And of course, again, that comes to play today in our conversations, or lack thereof conversations, with the Palestinian leadership, and about what a settlement, what a negotiation, what a peace might look like. And everyone has their different ideas based on whatever text you're reading from, and what you believe is where you're meant to be. And so the settlers who live in East Nowhere, West Bank, they're there because they believe God wants them there. I was there in 2000 and whatever it was, 2004. I want to say 2004, 2005, for the Hitnatkut, for the disengagement from Gaza. In fact, when I arrived to Israel, that was like my first day. Like I turned on the news, and I'm like, Netanyahu, not Netanyahu, Ariel Sharon is on every channel. So he must be very popular in Israeli TV. Where's the sitcoms? No, it's just Sharon. And so that was part of the whole thing. And it wasn't a fun beginning in terms of the first couple of weeks, because of the tenseness that was sort of in the air during that time period, because the settlers who were in Gaza were in no mood to leave. Some of them had already left because they knew it had been the die had been cast, but the other ones who were there needed to be picked up and dragged out of their house and relocated physically because they did not want to leave the Gaza Strip, which was untenable to have the IDF and to have the Israeli soldiers there protecting a small group of settlers in the midst of the Palestinian community. And so it was not a fun day, but certainly that was the whole thing was this is what we think God wants us to be. God wants us to be living here in the middle of of nowhere because we want to live in quote unquote greater Israel. And again, not so much. And so there's a lot of debate about these lands, West Bank and Gaza. Though again, the Gaza issue is sort of settled for now. But about where should the lines be? Where should the lines of the borders? Where should they be? And if we're looking at the biblical text for our answer, it might be a little tricky to have a piece. It's like if they quoted Quran at me, hey, this is what it says here. But it's a little bit tricky to argue from biblical text, in terms of how the borders of the state of Israel should be created. Doesn't really lend itself to a lot of good conversation if your answer is because God said so. Why do you need to live in Jericho? God said so. Yeah. Okay, so
Where is the sea? What is the Sea of Philistia?
I don't know where the Sea of. I was guessing that it was.
The Jordan River?
No.
Red Sea, Med Sea, Dead Sea. So I'm guessing it's Mediterranean Sea. But let's give it a look. Let me see. Let's ask Rabbi Google. Let's see. Yeah, Mediterranean.
Mediterranean. Thank you.
Yeah. The Great Sea. Yeah, so the Mediterranean, yeah. It's a beautiful place to be. Hang out by the Mediterranean. It's a nice place to be. Hard to beat. Okay. Okay. Highlight me a little more here. You shall make no.
You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall not remain in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me. For you will serve their God, and I will prove a snare to you.
Yeah, so it's going to be a bad thing if you start worshiping their gods. It's not going to end well because they're not going to be able to help you, not going to be able to do things for you, and it's going to be a problem. Going to be some trouble. Not easy to avoid temptation. Not easy to look at all these places of worship and go, hey, that looks fun. That looks like a good time. They didn't have that the idea of spiritual, again, because there wasn't a really great sense of monotheism. Again, at that point in time, there was a recognition that other gods were there. So it's like you sort of go and go, oh, this church is much cooler. They have a rock band every week. They have really cool, whatever it is. I went once, years and years ago, to one of those big revival sort of churches, it's in a big tent kind of thing, and you sort of go in. And I've been to one or two mega church things as well. Not bad customer service. You sort of go in. There's a coffee bar that's there, and people are passing out donuts. It's off to a good start. You get a little free food, and everyone's very welcoming. In these places, it's easier to get ensnared. That's the wrong word. It's easy to be envious, sometimes of other people's traditions and what they sort of have going for them. And you go, oh, that seems awesome, especially if you don't have a great sense of your own theology, your own sort of belief system. It's easy to, hey, my friend, it's all, what's it called? Personal referrals, come to my church, we got a great, whatever it is. Okay.
It'd be okay until somebody hands you a snake.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want that. I was born a snake handler and will die a snake handler.
Yeah, no, thank you.
No, that's okay. Yeah. And so yeah, so it's just they don't want the Israelites to be confused and to be, tempted by such things. Not easy. Not easy. Okay. Melissa, you're up.
Then he said to Moses, come up to the Lord with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel, and bow low from afar. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, nor shall the people come up with him. Moses went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord and all the rules. And all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the things that the Lord has commanded, we will do.
Yeah, easy sell, at least back then, right? Easy to say, yeah, so God sort of says, okay, we need to have more of a, let's have a committee meeting. We have to sort of bring up some of our buddies here, Aaron, Nadav, and Abihu. Nadav and Abihu, we remember, are going to be crispy fried in Leviticus. So it's not going to end well for them, but they're still around now. But in Leviticus, they get zapped. And then we have the 70 elders of Israel, and we're gonna have a meeting, and so a lot of people know, give them all they need to know, and people are saying, great, sure, all that God has commanded we will do. If only we're that simple, and we learn it isn't. So then Moses gets to work, does a little writing. I'm listening a little more.
Moses then wrote down all the commands of the Lord. Early in the morning, he set the altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He designated some young men among the Israelites, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as offerings of well-being to the Lord.
Okay, so we got a little ritual here. We're going to have a little service. Give me that old time religion. We're going to sacrifice some animals. We're going to have these metaphorical moments here of the 12 pillars of the 12 tribes. Then mostly a little more about the blood. Give me some blood. Yeah, keep going.
Moses
blood.
took one part of the blood and put it in basins, and the other part of the blood he dashed against the altar. Then he took the record of the covenant and read it aloud to the people. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do. Moses took the blood and dashed it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant that the Lord now makes with you concerning all these commands.
Yeah, a lot of blood. Blood's getting sprayed everywhere here. It was going to be a surprise for Friday, but I'm actually getting some blood so I can dash the Benot Mitzvah people with the blood.
Yeah.
Make them official. There's not enough blood flinging in my job. That's all I'm saying. Is that I don't get to dash blood anymore. I'm actually pretty fine with that. That's gross. I mean, later on we get to Leviticus, get the ordination of the priests. And they have to get the blood put on them. And so it's not my thing. But blood. And again, there are entire books written about this, so it's hard to really sum up, but obviously there's a lot of symbolic, sort of meaning to blood, and blood being something that is powerful yet and sacred, but also scary, and something that serves as an impurifier. So it could purify and impurify, it could cause something to be sacred or profane, so to speak. And so there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of just trickiness when it comes to blood as life force. And you had to be very, even in the Bible, they had an understanding, at least, that blood was very important and blood was very powerful, and so one would get the understanding. I'm pretty sure that blood was a pretty commonly used substance in other worship practices as well. It's sort of assimilation in a way that, if other people are using blood, we probably would use blood too. But I think, again, is a nod to the power that they believe blood has. And that's why you can't eat blood, in Jewish tradition, why you can't get a decent steak in a kosher, right? Because they have to burn it to a crisp. There's no medium rare, in a kosher steakhouse. You have to get yours, medium well to well done, because you can't consume blood.
Blood was life.
Say again?
Blood was life.
Blood was life, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we had to be very careful with how we treated blood. And just throwing it everywhere. Yeah, it's a little rough. Moses and Aaron, Nadav and Abihu, 70 elders of Israel. They saw, here's very tricky stuff here. They saw the God of Israel. But you can't see God, Rabbi. Well, here we see a little bit of something. It's unclear what they see, what they not see. A lot of this is then interpreted, obviously, as metaphor. They don't actually see God. Under whose feet, you get to see God's feet, or the likeness of a pavement of sapphire, like the very sky for purity. Yet God did not raise a hand against the leaders of the Israelites. They beheld God and they ate and drank. So they're able to have some kind of communion here, some kind of interaction, engagement with God. It's like a picnic, and you look at, oh, there's God. I don't know exactly how it works. I'm assuming God, has really nice feet because it's God. I think he's had a few pedicures in his day. But you have sort of God's feet that are there that are amazing, and God standing on something like maybe something looks like sapphire. Who knows? Which is like the sky. Why not? It's just sort of not coherent in a way, but it's but how do you define that experience of God? How do you put that into words? And so this idea that they beheld something, and of course later on, not even a few chapters, you're going to get, you can't see my face and live, Moses. Like I'll make my goodness pass before you. And so this gets a lot of interpretation, as one can imagine. I just love the last sentence. They beheld God and they ate and they drank. Hey God, you want a drumstick? Sort of sitting down here. Someone passed God the pasta salad. It's hard to have a bad time with macaroni salad. So it's, they're just hanging, having a nice meal, and God's there around, hanging out with everybody. And then we get this next part, which is like God says to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there. Because remember, all this is oral at this point. Moses is beginning to write, but a lot of this is oral. So God said, come, I'm going to give you the stone tablets with all the teaching and commandments, which I've inscribed to instruct them by God's own finger, right? God sort of, creates the 10 commandments. Moses and Joshua, here's a little shout out to Joshua. He's there too. And they ascend the mountain of God. Just Moses and just Joshua. Joshua goes up part of the way. Moses goes up all the way. And the elders said, you know what? Here's good for you. Wait here, this far and no farther. Wait here for us till we return. You have Aaron and you have Hur with you. Hur is Aaron's son, purportedly, or at least, Hur is another tribesman. He's another, official there, chieftain, who's pretty heady, pretty smart dude. So if you get a problem, talk to Aaron, talk to Hur, and then Moses ascends the mountain, and the cloud, very theatrical, the cloud covers the mountain so you can't see what's going on. And the presence of God abides on Sinai. The cloud hid it for 6 days. And 7th day, God calls to Moses in the midst of the cloud. Now the presence of God is there, appeared in the sight of the Israelites as a consuming fire and smoke, a little pyrotechnics from the divine. Moses ascends, goes inside the cloud, and then of course he remains there for, as we know, 40 days and 40 nights. And as we know, it's not going to end well. 40 days and 40 nights from being up there. Speaking of ending well, we made it to the end of our session here. It has been my pleasure to study with you this past year. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's literally one of my favorite things that I get to do as a rabbi. And so one of the favorite things I get to do during my week is to be here with all of you and to study Torah together and to learn with you and to engage in this study. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate everyone being here and taking part in the experience. And we're gonna be around sooner than later again. We got a lot of stuff coming up over the summer, but then we have some good study coming up in August as well, some good opportunities. Again, until we meet again, my friends, but I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Happy
Yeah.
trails. All right.
Thank
See
you.
you all sooner than later. Okay?
We'll
Very
see you
good.
Friday for the big
Good
event.
summer.